Total war is often presented as the ultimate expression of national strength, a moment when a society unites, sacrifices, and pushes itself beyond all limits to achieve victory. In reality, total war is not a path to survival, but a slow process of self-destruction. It demands not only the mobilization of armies, but the transformation of entire societies into instruments of violence. When war becomes total, the distinction between battlefield and home front disappears, and the state begins to consume its own foundations in pursuit of victory. History shows that nations may survive ordinary wars, but total war reshapes them so deeply that even winners emerge permanently damaged. Total war begins with the idea that nothing can remain untouched. Industry, agriculture, education, culture, and science are all redirected toward a single purpose. Citizens cease to be individuals and become resources. Labor is reorganized, consumption is controlled, and dissent is treated as sabotage. At first, this appears efficient. Production rises, armies expand, the nation feels powerful. But beneath this surface strength, the structure of society begins to warp. Economic balance is lost, civil institutions erode, and long-term sustainability is sacrificed for immediate output. In the 20th century, total war reached a scale never seen before. World War II was not simply a clash of armies, but a struggle between entire systems. Factories replaced fields as strategic targets. Cities became battlegrounds. Civilians were no longer collateral victims, but deliberate objectives. This shift was not accidental. Once a state commits fully to total war, it cannot tolerate limits, because limits imply restraint, and restraint implies vulnerability. The logic of total war demands escalation, even when escalation undermines the very society it claims to defend. Economically, total war is catastrophic over time. War production prioritizes quantity over efficiency and speed over durability. Consumer goods disappear. Infrastructure is pushed beyond capacity. Skilled labor is drained into the military or overworked in factories. Inflation rises, debt accumulates. States borrow against futures they may never reach. While wartime production figures often look impressive, they hide structural decay. Machines wear out faster than they can be replaced. Transportation networks deteriorate. Agriculture suffers from labor shortages and resource diversion. The economy survives only by consuming itself. Socially, total war transforms citizens into instruments. Education shifts from critical thinking to obedience. Media becomes propaganda. Art becomes messaging. Fear replaces trust. Neighbors become informants. In such an environment, social cohesion does not strengthen, it fractures. People comply not because they believe, but because they are afraid. This creates a brittle society that appears united, but is internally hollow. When the external pressure of war is removed, these fractures widen, often leading to unrest, repression, or collapse. One of the most destructive aspects of total war is its impact on morality. Ordinary war contains limits, whether legal, cultural, or religious. Total war rejects them. If survival is framed as absolute, then any act becomes justifiable. Bombing civilians, forced labor, starvation policies, and mass displacement are no longer seen as crimes, but necessities. Over time, this corrodes the moral framework of the state itself. Violence becomes normalized. Dehumanization becomes routine. Once a society accepts these principles externally, it cannot prevent them from turning inward. World War II offers clear examples. Germany mobilized its entire society for war, reorganizing industry, suppressing dissent, and pursuing ideological goals through violence. The result was not resilience, but exhaustion and collapse. By the end of the war, Germany's cities were destroyed, its population traumatized, and its moral authority obliterated. Even those who survived victory on paper inherited ruins, guilt, and division. Total war did not preserve the nation, it nearly erased it. The Soviet Union also demonstrates the paradox of total war. It survived and emerged as a superpower, but at an unimaginable cost. Entire regions were depopulated. Millions died. The economy was distorted for decades. Political repression intensified rather than relax. Victory required such extreme sacrifice that post-war recovery became another form of struggle. The state survived, but the society paid a price that echoed for generations. Total war did not strengthen the system, it hardened it into something brittle and fearful. Even the Allied powers, often seen as the winners, were not spared. Britain emerged victorious, but economically drained. Its empire weakened beyond repair. Rationing continued for years. Infrastructure required massive rebuilding. The psychological toll of total mobilization lingered long after the fighting ended. The United States avoided physical devastation, but total war reshaped its relationship with the state, the military, and global power. Permanent mobilization, vast defense industries, and constant preparation for conflict became the new normal. Victory did not bring peace, it brought a different kind of tension. Total war also destroys creativity and innovation in subtle ways. While it accelerates certain technologies, it narrows the scope of inquiry. Research becomes goal-driven, not curiosity-driven. Fields that do not serve immediate military needs are neglected or suppressed. Scientists and engineers work under pressure, surveillance, and ideological constraints. This produces rapid breakthroughs, but at the cost of long-term intellectual freedom. After the war, societies struggle to rediscover balance, often discovering that entire generations have been shaped to obey rather than to question. The demographic consequences of total war are equally severe. Millions of young people are removed from society, killed, wounded, or psychologically scarred. Birth rates collapse. Families are broken. Gender roles are disrupted in ways that are not always supported by post-war structures. The loss of human capital cannot be replaced quickly, if at all. A nation may rebuild its cities, but it cannot easily rebuild its people. Perhaps the most dangerous legacy of total war is precedent. Once a society has crossed the threshold where everything is permitted in the name of survival, it becomes easier to cross it again. Leaders learn that fear works. Populations learn to accept extraordinary measures. The state learns to demand absolute loyalty. Even in peacetime, the mechanisms of total war remain embedded in institutions, ready to be reactivated. This creates a cycle where war becomes not an exception, but a recurring condition. Total war also destroys the idea of victory itself. When the entire society is mobilized, victory requires the enemy's total collapse. Negotiation becomes betrayal. Compromise becomes weakness. This eliminates off-ramps and prolongs conflict beyond rational limits. Wars that could end become wars that must end absolutely. The result is higher casualties, greater destruction, and deeper hatred. By the time victory arrives, if it arrives at all, the cost has already exceeded any possible gain. History repeatedly confirms this pattern. Empires that pursue total war often survive the conflict only to collapse afterwards. Their institutions are too centralized, their economies too distorted, their societies too traumatized to adapt. The very tools that enabled wartime mobilization become obstacles to recovery. Control replaces flexibility. Fear replaces trust. Power becomes defensive rather than creative. Total war promises security, but delivers vulnerability. It claims to defend civilization, but consumes it. It demands unity, but creates long-term division. The irony is that the more completely a society commits to total war, the less capable it becomes of sustaining peace. Peace requires compromise, empathy, and resilience. Total war destroys all three. In the end, total war does not destroy nations through defeat alone. It destroys them by changing what they are. Even when borders remain intact and flags continue to fly, something essential has been lost. The society that emerges is not the one that entered the war. It is harder, narrower, and more fragile. The war may end, but its logic remains, shaping politics, culture, and fear long into the future. This is why total war always destroys its creators, not instantly, not always visibly, but inevitably. The damage is cumulative, structural, and generational. No amount of victory parades can conceal it. History judges total war not by who wins,